Yeah, but why do you look so much bigger than me right now? Do you mind if I do a couple push-ups or something?
No, we got the camera angles here optimized to add more muscle mass, you know? So we got like filters on them and stuff.
Yeah, like
No,
a
I'm just
Snapchat
joking.
filter. No, well, Dillon, Lowe, thank you very much for being here, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You know what's cool about podcasting is, like, we've never talked at all before this, and I don't know if you know this or anything, but maybe it sounds kind of weird. The only reason I know who you are is because at the Culture of Champions event earlier in the year, which is awesome event in Arizona, Josh Tilley, he puts that on. Amazing event. And my wife and I were sitting behind you and your now wife, and I think maybe through Braven or something, I don't know how, but I saw your profile and I'm like, I need to follow this dude. Obviously you're jacked, and I know there's a lot to learn from you. So yeah, with that introduction, thank you.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome to see like the power of social media. You know what I mean? Because it, like, more than anything, it just draws people on this, like, it gives people on the same frequency a platform to be able to like connect like this. Because, you know, in another world, like, you would have sat behind me and we would have never talked again, and like, who knows? So it's really cool to be able to connect. Even like, I mean, I don't know, are you out of Arizona as well?
Yeah, I'm in Tucson. So are you in Phoenix area? Where are you at?
I'm down in Safford. So like the Safford area, if you know where that is. We're in a small town just outside of Safford called Pima, which is where the Optimal Health Systems headquarters is. Yeah, I moved here like June, just because we were working with Doug on some stuff. You're familiar with like Optimal Health Systems and all of that, right?
A little bit. You're gonna have to get into that. So, yeah, and I mean, honestly, your whole story too, but sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Go for that.
Oh,
there's a lot to learn.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, I could go on forever, but long story short, my wife's dad, my father-in-law, owns a big supplement company based out of Pima, Arizona. So they're primarily, they sell to doctors primarily. So it's really cool, like the whole story behind that, because I mean, I guess we'll get into it later, but anyways, yeah, so he owns a really big supplement company. When Nevaeh and I got married, he kind of came to me and was like, I've got some business ideas for you guys. So we decided to move down here just so we can be closer to production and stuff, and we're working on a lot of stuff, man. So we're just down here for the time being.
And then not to mention too, so your brother-in-law, Braven, is the owner of Gains in Bulk, right?
Yep.
Which has just gone huge too recently. I've seen where I'll just follow influencers that post it. And I'm like, hey, I know, I've seen, Braven speak on the stage and things like that. So it must run in the family. There's a lot of big things going on with you guys.
Oh, they've got something in the water here, man. It's just crazy. Like, Doug, he's been an entrepreneur his whole life. He's kind of, he's went through it the hard way and came out on the other side with a lot of really great lessons. And it's been really cool because he's instilled that into his children, which is like awesome. And so I think he kind of provided a platform for Braven to start Gains in Bulk, and then Braven took it from there and just made it exponential. So it's crazy to see what they've been able to do with it. But yeah, like, dude, just even being around them, for me, like, these are my family now. And it's like crazy, because he'll post a video with like Andy Elliott or like Cass Martin or like, these people that I used to look up to, or that, I still look up to, but these people that are like crazy, and it's just like, they're doing something on another level.
Yeah. I mean, so I want to hear about your story, like how you got into bodybuilding. I mean, going to Natural Olympia, right? Yeah. And I don't want to butcher anything, but I want to hear it from you of like where you even started getting to where you're at now. Like, how long have you even been lifting?
Oh, man. I mean? Yeah, it's a story, bro. Like, it goes back. So I was really athletic in high school. So like I played baseball and wrestling, so I was like no stranger to, being physical and that type of stuff. But then basically what happened was, like, as a transition into my college years, I got to this point because I went to school for pre-med. So I was like, just booked with classes all the time, all the stuff that I was doing to try to get into med school. And for the first year, I just kind of let it slip and I didn't do anything. And I'm the type of guy, like, I just won't eat. So I got super skinny. Anyways, kind of got sick of that. Like, obviously the stuff that comes with that, anxiety, depression, like, that type of stuff. And yeah, eventually what happened was I started going to the gym as a way to kind of just, get to or just as a way to like relieve stress, to get out of my head. And basically with time, I got to the point where it became like this, just a huge stress relief. And it became like the highlight of my day every single day to show up to the gym. And not to mention, like, at the same time, I was in pre-med, so I was like learning all the things about the body, nutrition, and muscle groups and like that type of stuff, which was really cool. To be able to take that and apply it in the gym and just see how my body would change. So it was wild because like I didn't really even start with the intention of being a bodybuilder. Like that was never even really on my radar.
And how old were you at this time too?
College. So I went into college right when I turned 18. So it was like 18 through 21. Yeah. So 18 through 21 when I like really started lifting and getting into it and stuff. And then from there, I got to, it was kind of funny because I actually completed my entire bachelor program and all my prereqs for medical school. And I literally got to my last semester and life happened and I was just like, okay, the reality of it kind of hit me and I was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do, obviously your parents tell you go be a doctor, be this and that. And like, by the time 21, 22 came around, I was like, I just don't know if that's like the impact that I want to make on the world. So I up and just like moved out of my hometown, stopped going to school and moved to Salt Lake because I was actually from a small town in Utah called Price, which, you probably don't know Utah too well, right? But
a little bit. I mean, I got an extended family there and everything. I go maybe once a year, but
yeah,
I'm not familiar with Price, so.
Yeah, so super small town. But yeah, ended up moving to Salt Lake and I just told everyone like I'm gonna be a bodybuilder. Like I'm gonna be a personal trainer and a bodybuilder. Like, and everybody thought I was crazy, which was pretty funny.
Well, the last semester of school though too, I mean,
yeah.
So I kind of see I have one more semester left of school and I'm kind of like, man, I'm this far. So you must have had a conviction in yourself. Like, did you believed in yourself enough that like it was worth it to say, forget about that and go after what you actually wanted?
I don't know. That's the hard part is like, I almost feel like, cause I mean, to be real with you and just, I mean, maybe this is a lot, but I was actually married previously. So I got married at 21 and we were married for a year. So I was going into my last semester and we ended up getting divorced. So that like hit me really hard. And so basically what I did was like, I postponed school. Like I can't do school this semester. I got to move. I got to get out of this town and change some stuff up with my life. So in that time when I moved, it just made me like rethink everything, like I just went through this big divorce, lost everything, moved out of my hometown. I actually quit my job, which like I had held this job for almost 4 years while going through school. So I was like, it's kind of like midlife crisis type deal, but at like 22. But it just kind of like looking back, the crazy part was like, it reconnected me to myself, right? Because I feel like I had went so far down this path that like kind of everybody just expected me to go down, and then once you lose everything and, you don't have to worry about pleasing everybody around you, then it's like, okay, well, what do I want? And I think that's what it was like, it wasn't that I had this like crazy story of like, I'm going to go change the world. It was more just like, okay, like everything's gone. So like, I might as well rebuild a life that I want, And so that's kind of what I set out to do. And it sounds crazy, but like anyone who's been through that level of like losing everything is just like, I don't know, probably makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. I mean, I want to say like, I love that. I don't love that it was such a hard time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That makes me think of, Jesse James West, right? I'm sure you know of him. He did a podcast, and he said that really struck a chord with me was do what you're meant to and not what you're supposed to. And I've been thinking about that a lot, man, like, because there is a lot of expectation, and I wanted to do medicine as well, which is kind of funny just because I was like, oh, that's the most prestigious thing you could do. That's like, there's good money and whatever. I wanted to look good for my family and maybe other people. So it's funny seeing that similarity with you too. But at this time, did you have size to you? Like, were you still pretty scrawny or?
I mean, my first like year or two of lifting, I went from 140 pounds to like 190 probably. So I put on quite a bit of size. Like my body.
That's some newbie gains.
Yeah, dude. My body just responded to it really well. So it was kind of on the radar too at that point where it was like, dang, like, okay, this is something that one, I like doing. And two, seems like my genetics are kind of working in my favor. So like, you know what I mean? And it was still in the infantile stages. Like I hadn't planned on competing at that point yet, but like I always saw bodybuilders and stuff and it was like, that would be so cool to do that one day, you know, and kind of in that place where like a lot of guys are, where it's like, it'd be so cool to go like do that, but there's all this stuff, finances, and, you know, so they kind of stay stuck. But for me, it kind of, everything just kind of like fell into place for me to go do it.
So how did you start, or how did you know like where to start, especially with the finances of like making money? Or I mean, if there's more to the story, definitely go with that, because I want to follow the track of like how you got to where you are now.
So I moved up to Salt Lake, and the first thing that kind of came to mind, like obviously I got my certification pretty quickly. It's a few week course, so busted that out really fast. And then the first thing that came to mind was like, I got to go work at Vasa, right? I don't know why. Because it's like this big box gym. They load you up with clients, you get experience and stuff. So I ended up working at Vasa for almost a year. Took me about 6 months to go from zero to being completely packed with clients, and, you know, working with like, I think I had like 50, 60 clients, which was, you know, quite a bit. And then once I started to gain some stability there, it was like, okay, time to compete. So I did the thing that, like, I mean, seems like this is everyone's story, but I reached out to the one guy that I knew on Instagram that was like actively coaching bodybuilders. Ended up signing up with him as my coach. And then it was about 6 months later, I did my first show. I did 2 shows back to back. And then, it was interesting, but competed in the NPC, which, like, I don't know how much you know about bodybuilding, but the NPC
you'd have to you'd have to inform me on that.
Yeah. So with bodybuilding, and this is kind of what leads me to where I am now. So with the NPC, it's kind of fair game. Like there's no drug testing or anything like that. So that's where you see like the bigger guys, right? So you're seeing like the Phil Heaths, Ronnie Coleman, C-Bum, like the guys who it's kind of like they just have this rule where they don't test and don't ask questions. So like, you know, do whatever you can to get as big as possible. And then they have this other organization called the INBA PNBA that's all drug tested. So nobody's on steroids. Like they keep a really good eye on you to make sure that they're not like allowing that into their organization. And anybody who wins pro eligibility is drug tested like on the spot. So I ended up competing in the NPC for 2 years, and I placed fairly well, but you know, it's just kind of crazy because like you're around it so much. Like pretty much every bodybuilder in the NPC is on steroids, and it just kind of became this thing of like, okay, when are you gonna get on, and when are you gonna take it seriously and stuff. And so eventually what I ended up doing was I switched from, I did some research and I found this organization called the INBA PNBA, and I switched over and ended up, because this was my 3rd year of competing, I ended up winning my first show, and then I went pro, went to Team USA, which is it's a show in Vegas 6 weeks later, and had my pro debut, won that show. And then another 8 weeks later in November, went to Vegas again for Natural Olympia, and I placed 9th in the world for natural men's physique.
That's
So,
crazy.
yeah, it was just crazy because like once I found that organization, I just felt like one, it's an even playing field, but two, it was like, okay, I'm actually getting somewhere, which is really cool.
I mean, I would think that you'd not, I mean, obviously not in a personal way, but like, how would you have a chance against people that are on gear or if they're not being tested? But
yeah, it's just, it's crazy because it's just kind of evolved into that, you know what I mean? And just everybody's on it because I feel like young men specifically, just like that's kind of the narrative that they're told is like, yeah, if you want to get big, you have to get on. It's like, I don't know. So my whole thing is like, I kind of want to just prove to people that you can be successful, you can build a business and be a successful bodybuilder without PEDs. So
yeah, so dive into that if you don't mind, because that's what I get from you is that you're pretty passionate about that. So what's your opinion on the whole fitness industry of, there are people like Trend Twins or whatever. Obviously, C-Bum is C-Bum, but a lot of these guys I've heard, which you'd have a lot better an understanding, but I've heard that, most fitness influencers are on gear or are on PEDs, right? And I don't even know a whole lot of the differences, but what's your opinion on it, or why have you formed the opinion that you do have now?
Dang, I actually just did a podcast about this like right before this when I was recording mine. And it's cool because it kind of made me think back to like why I formed this belief. And what it is ultimately is like, I just decided to say no to drugs in general, right? Like across the board. I don't care if it's a PED. I don't care if it's like, whatever. Because what it was I grew up in Price, which Price is, I mean, I don't know if it's known for it anymore, but in the time that I was growing up, like drugs were a really bad thing. Like I was around a lot of it. Like, I mean, I don't know if I can say it, like how in depth I should go on this, but like I saw a lot of hard drug usage, and not even just like marijuana and alcohol. It's like, the bad stuff. Before the age of like 15, and
crazy. And in Utah too, right? Usually those small towns are like, I'm an LDS guy, right? Like, so you'd think that you wouldn't be seeing that, but
yeah, it's interesting. And I don't know why particularly. Maybe it was just like where I was at in my life at the time or whatever. Like, I just wanted to be one of the cool kids. So, when you're 12 years old and you want to be one of the cool kids, and then a few years go by and you see what the cool kids are doing, it's like, man. So anyways, I think for me, it was like from the age of like 15 to 18, I'd seen a lot of my friends get in some deep stuff. Like, I've had friends overdose, end up in jail, prison, like, and it's just crazy looking back to see like how everybody's lives had played out. But I think what it was like, I just saw that and I was like, okay, no drugs. Like, I don't really care if it's PEDs or if it's like the hardcore stuff. But then the second opportunity came where you're in this gym full of bodybuilders, and of course everybody's like, yeah, just do it. And it's the exact same thing as like 9th grade where you're in a circle of guys and everybody's, doing whatever. And at the time, I think it was just like, it takes a lot of courage to just say no and be like, no, like this is what I believe in, regardless of what everybody else is doing. And I mean, obviously I've contemplated it a lot, probably more than anybody, because it is so relevant. Like, could I hop on gear and probably be a IFBB pro and make a lot more money and like do all the stuff really quickly? Yeah. I've had lots of friends who have taken that route. But there's a cost to be paid for that. Like, I know, like, you can be sterile, or it increases your risk of cancer, or like there's just so many things associated with it that like most kids, especially 18 to like 23, like they just don't even think about, So obviously at 18, 19, 20 years old, you're not necessarily thinking about having a family yet. But by the time you're 25 to 30, starts to become a reality. And like, that's the one thing that you'll look back and be glad you didn't do it. But
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, do you think that that's a dangerous side of the fitness industry right now? I mean, to me, I don't know if it's because I'm in my 20s or because it actually has become more popular, but
mhm,
obviously the gym and fitness physiques, I think I mean, from my understanding, unless it's just my For You page all the time, I
mhm.
think it's gotten more popular. Do you think that's a dangerous side of the fitness industry? Is everyone thinking like, hey, I'm 19, like, why am I not huge yet? Why do I not look like C-Bum? So I got to find other ways to do that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and honestly, like what I think it is more than anything is just a lack of understanding. Um, because I think a lot of these guys, and I mean, I've worked at bodybuilding gyms because that was kind of the next thing. I ended up being a trainer at a bodybuilding gym in Utah. And a lot of the time it's like they just don't fully understand what they're in for. You know what I mean? Like they take a shot or two and it's like they don't understand that like your body grows a dependence on that. So a lot of people will end up permanently messing up their hormones and then they end up on TRT for the rest of their lives. And it's the same thing. Like TRT does have pretty bad side effects. It's probably not something that you want to be on for the rest of your life, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just a lack of understanding in general.
Which TRT to me seems like it's, again, I don't know the nuances of like the differences between them, but it
Mhm.
almost seems like there's a better image of TRT. Like, hey, there's some cases where it helps. I mean, is there any case in your opinion where it's like, yeah, that's a good idea? Or are you more of the opinion of like, you should never be doing this?
Yeah. So I started off like obviously I had less understanding in the beginning, right? So I started off like, if the time comes that I need to do it, then I'll do it, right? Um, as I've gotten closer with Doug and learned more about the industry, I've come to realize like a lot of the things that we're being told, and this is probably like I'm not too much of a conspiracy theorist, but like the narrative is mainly controlled by the people in the pharmaceutical industry, right? So like, what am I gonna do? Like, how do I sell you a subscription for life, right? I just say, oh, well, everybody has to do it. That's just how it works, right? So now you have to pay me $50 a month so that I can give you your shot and you can feel normal again. So yeah, it's just this big lie that's like been told amongst like hormone doctors to push TRT. And I don't know, like the more that I've understood the research and stuff, the more that I've seen that it's not true. Like I lift every single day with Doug, who is 59 years old. The man is almost 60, right? He keeps up with me in the gym, but two, we're also like, my family, like we're all health nuts, bro. So, with that being said, we all get our blood work taken quarterly. So every 3 months we're getting our blood work. And it's funny because we actually compare our blood work to each other. So like, testosterone levels, all the stuff. And Doug actually at 60 years old has higher testosterone than me as a 27-year-old male
No
right
way.
now. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? It's just like they tell you, oh, after 30, your testosterone goes down. And it's like, not really. The thing is like, if you believe that your testosterone is going to go down, then the actions that lead to your testosterone go down start to happen, right? So it's like, oh, my testosterone's just going down, so I don't have to hit the gym, and I don't have to eat right, and I don't have to do all this stuff. And then they go get their blood work tested, and their testosterone's low, and it's like, oh yeah, because of genetics and age. And it's like, not really. If you
Yeah.
if you believe that you have influence on your testosterone and you take the actions that will help boost your testosterone, like taking a multivitamin, lifting, and, being healthy, then your testosterone will be higher. So it's just it's just the narrative that we've been told for so long.
Yeah. So I was going to say too, the question that probably every teenager, everyone in their 20s, I guess any person would ask is, you know, you can keep it brief, but what are the non-negotiables that you have for if you're concerned about testosterone or really just health overall? Like, what are the things that can increase that naturally so you don't have to look for other means of like, hey, I should think about TRT or I should think about this?
Yeah, so there's really two ways to go about it. And I would obviously recommend the first way, which is blood work every 6 months. We work with a program called Nutrients RX. It's about $350. But it shows you your vitamin levels, vital organ function, and your hormone levels. So you'll know everything, right? It's basically like taking your car to the dealership and having it serviced, right? They run diagnostics on it and figure out what's wrong. And then you can supplement to fill your nutrient deficiencies, and then your testosterone will go up. That's the best way to do it, in my opinion. You know, it is $350, so not every single person has access to $350 twice a year. So a lot of the time what I recommend is kind of a broad spectrum of just making sure that you're getting your multivitamin in, you know, lifting weights and doing all the things that you need to do to like boost your testosterone as it is. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does. And I mean, for you personally too, I think a lot of times people can get lost in like the complications of it and just like, you know, I think sometimes we complicate things way too much. Like, do you have just simple things that you do every single day? Like whether it's, I think I've implemented like steps. Like, do you do, you know, do you have just a list of things that you do every single day? Do you try to, you know, follow that? I try to do like 10,000 steps a day just because I've heard that's really good for your health overall. And right, like if you're being cognizant of fat and whatnot.
Yeah, I would say obviously lifting weights. Weight training is crazy good for overall testosterone production, because the more muscle mass you have, your body will kind of adjust to be able to build that muscle. You just have to be providing the stimulus for it, right? I would take a daily multivitamin every single day, no matter what. Vitamin D, man, what else? And then more than anything, I think whole foods are a really, really big one. One of the things that Doug is kind of going all out on this over the next year, but there's a lot going on with the food industry, particularly in America, that I mean, I don't know how like familiar you are with that, but there's a lot of stuff in our foods like dyes and preservatives and even microplastics that tend to build up in our body and stop the production of testosterone, right? So if you can prioritize whole foods and then, you know, lift weights and take a multivitamin, like those three things should be enough to keep you at a level where you're like feeling pretty good for the most part, right? Like obviously it's a little bit different for me because I'm like trying to optimize at the highest level to be top in the world, but like for the general population, those three things are like the best things you could do.
Yeah, I love that. And it is crazy, I think, when you see the kind of stuff online. Again, you know, I don't know if I'm like too much of a conspiracy theorist, but I do see the kind of stuff where it's like you buy McDonald's in the US, but then that stuff's illegal like in England or in the UK or whatever. I'm like, how is this getting, you know, how is this flying?
So this is the Grant family in general over the next year is going to be at the forefront of this fight that we have going on. Doug has branded it the fight against the great American food fraud. And
so is
actually,
that, or yeah, go for it. I was saying, you know, who is that with, or what, with organizations or anything like that?
So, have you ever heard of Generation Iron?
I have.
Yeah. So
I don't know too much about it, but.
So he's working with Vlad, the CEO of Generation Iron right now. They've been shooting it, or they've been shooting a documentary over the last couple months. It should be out by the end of the year, but there's also like, they've brought a lot of big names on board. I can't really confirm it, but he was working on getting RFK.
Jeez.
So I don't know.
That's what I had in my mind when you're saying the fight against this, right? That's crazy.
Yeah, bro. RFK, obviously he's like the one that's going to be making all the changes and stuff, but he is very upfront with that stuff. So Who knows if it'll actually happen? I know that there was like some what's the word? Like he had basically confirmed that he was going to do it, but then Donald Trump got elected. So like, he's got a lot on his plate right now. So I don't know like the whole behind the scenes with that, but there are like multiple influencers and people in the industry that he's got on board. Actually Flex Lewis, you know who Flex Lewis is?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So Flex Lewis will be a part of it. And that one's like
crazy.
Confirmed.
Yeah, I mean, that's important. And I know, again, I can't say I, have all the facts and data about the health industry, but I've definitely heard that a lot of problems that we have today come from just the bull crap food that we're eating and all the processed stuff. And
it's as clear as day, man. Like that's the crazy thing is we actually just got a box of snacks from the UK the other day that showed up. We specifically got it from the UK and had it shipped over here. And dude, I don't know if you've seen what's going on with Kellogg's, but
heard of it, yeah, with the cereal,
they're getting canceled, dude. But if you take Kellogg's, like any Kellogg's cereal, and you look at it from the US, it's got dyes, it's got preservatives, like all kinds of crazy stuff. And then you look at the one from the UK, and it's like wheat and like sugar. That's it. Like literally two ingredients. And so, and we've got a list of 50 ingredients on the US one. So it's pretty apparent. It's just, I don't think a lot of people take the time to actually, order stuff from the UK and compare. But it's crazy that we've allowed that to happen here.
Well, it's so easy. So for whatever reason, it's just kind of like, all right, everyone else is doing it. It's cheaper. It's easy. Go get McDonald's or have a Kellogg cereal.
That's the mindset right there, bro. Everyone else is doing it. So that's if everybody else is doing it, I don't know. I just think there should be some questioning there, right? And like, I get it because it's like so socially acceptable, but it's like, it's hard to, I guess one of the quotes that I try to live by is truth is never dependent on the census of opinion, right? So with that being said, look at the data, look at the facts, and if it's something that you're truly passionate about and willing to give that the time of day to like understand and formulate opinions on, then like you shouldn't, like other people's opinions really shouldn't matter too much.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, man. I have a lot of questions for you. I get excited. But speaking of, big names and things like that, I saw that you were with Bedros Keuilian not too long ago.
Oh, yeah.
And if people don't know who he is, you need to look him up because I love his podcast. I love his content, everything like that. I mean, I'm interested in how you even got in with him, or maybe you just met him or whatever. But I mean, are there a lot of people like that you've been able to meet? Maybe that's just the one that I've seen. My question is, though, really like what you've learned, and maybe this is more mindset, but like what you've learned from being able to rub shoulders with like him and other people in the fitness industry, obviously like from your family alone. I mean, there's is it a different mindset, or what have you learned being with people like that?
That's a tough one. I think there are a lot of similarities that I've seen. And I would say like the biggest ones are just like honestly being relentless in the pursuit of your dreams, right? Whatever that is. And like obviously primarily for me and like the people I'm around, it's the fitness industry, right? In general, whether it's like bodybuilding or owning a successful gym franchise or supplement company or whatever. But like I think the similarities are that these people are the ones that never quit no matter how bad it got. Whereas like, I think it's so easy to like, I don't know, like it's so easy to have that loss or have that hard time and then go back to what is comfortable and go back to what you were doing before, right? Like there's this part of me that at every fork in the road, like the number one thing I want to do is like move back to Price and wrap it up and just be like, okay, well, I'm not even meant to be here, like I'm supposed to be back in Price doing what everybody from my high school is doing, but at the same time, you can feel that and just realize that like you have a greater calling, so you're going to be tested. And those forks in the roads are the times, obviously you're being tested the most. So if there's anything I would say about Bedros specifically, or I mean, even Doug, Hillary, man, who else? I mean, I've met a lot of crazy people that have been like role models of mine over the last few years. But if there's anything that I've noticed from the ones that are super successful, it's just that they have no quit in them, and they know like what they want to do, and they just make it happen. So
yeah, I love that. And I see that in you, man, with your content, just because I know how hard it is to be in front of a camera. And I've made a YouTube, I've made YouTube videos, and they'll get like 10 people to watch it. And, a couple of those are probably like me watching it on a different computer or something. And I'm just like, dude, what's the point with this, right? Like, what keeps you going, I guess, with doing the content? And even like if it doesn't blow up yet, or even if you haven't, gotten paid from it or anything like that, like, why do you keep going?
It's just understanding that there's understanding the long game, I would say, right? Like Alex Hormozi always talks about it, but he did his podcast for 6 years before he hit number one. So he was like, I think he was like 600 episodes deep in podcast before he even really started getting views. And it was crazy because like, I think a lot of people compare themselves to the end product of where everybody else is at, right? Like if you look at Hormozi now, he's freaking killing it. But if you go back, and I actually went clear back to his first podcast ever, and I listened to it, and I'm like, man, like this is not good. Like I didn't even finish it because I didn't want to. But it's just, he's done it so many times over and over that he's gotten to the point where he's been able to captivate your attention, but then two, keep it for an entire 20-minute podcast. So it's crazy that he's been able to what's the word? He's been able to build that skill set, And so it's the same thing with my podcast, and everything that I'm doing is like, I don't necessarily care about the results because I know that I'm so early in the process. Hormozi's 35 right now. I'm 27. So like realistically over the next 8 years, if I crank out 2 podcasts per week, like one, I'm going to have more podcasts than him, but maybe, I mean, by then he'll have more, but you get the point. But two, like I'll also develop the skill set required to be successful, or I'll pivot into something that is more effective. But like, I mean, who really knows? But yeah, like I think it's that like in entrepreneurship, if your goal is to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to be willing to show up and do the work regardless of if you're getting paid or not. And that is the number one thing that separates 9-to-5 people from entrepreneurs, right? And it's
like you were just saying too, everyone, all the names that people would know, that seems like that was a trait that you just said that they have.
Yeah. Yep. It's just, you have to know what you want to do in life, and you have to be relentless in the pursuit of it, and it can't be about money. Like that's like another really big thing, is because if you're always keeping score and like trying to figure out how much money, or how much your return on investment of your time, energy, and money is, like, you're not going to get anywhere. As much as that like is hard to wrap your head around, like you have to be able to show up and work 60, 80 hours a week for nothing, because then with time, what tends to happen is like the biggest gains that you're ever going to see, both financially and in like growth of the company, are at the end. They're not at the beginning, right? So you're typically the one that's going to have to show up and put in all the systems and like build the company before you're able to achieve those high income months. And so that's my kind of mindset. And if you look at Hormozi, like he does the same exact thing. And that's like, that's why everything that he does is free. It's simply just to provide value up front, because if you can provide value up front and you build something like his books, or like, go check out his YouTube or his podcast or anything, like it's providing free value so that on the back end, he makes a lot of money. you know, and
Yeah.
obviously he's been doing it for years, but.
Right, but exactly, and that's what I need and I struggle with too, because it's like I make my first YouTube video and then I keep checking it. I'm like, why is this not viral yet? But exactly, like I went back, I did the same thing with Joe Rogan's podcast. I went to #1, and if you watch that, you have to go through thousands. And again, that's a lesson in itself. Thousands of podcasts, which he's the biggest name in podcasting, and it sucked. It was like on a laptop camera, and it was just him and his buddies. You can barely hear it. They were just like messing around. They had all these random filters going off, and you're like, this is not the same thing. But after thousands of iterations, like after all that, you know, and again, Hormozy too, like you were saying, isn't that what he said? Is he told his content guys like, all right, we'll try this, and after 5 years or 6 years, if it doesn't work, then we'll pivot.
Exactly.
So that's a lesson to me and anyone else, because, you know, we want things right away. We want success and the money right away, but that's just not how it works. So I appreciate that you bring that up.
Yeah, exactly. And the model, or the way that I like to look at it, is always consistency, intensity, and then efficiency, right? Those are the 3 kind of phases of doing anything, right? Whether you're going to the gym or starting a podcast or whatever the thing is the very first step, the very first phase is you have to do it consistently for long enough to identify the problems. Right. And then it's like intensity. That's where you start to like figure out problems, and then you can ramp it up a bit. And then once you're working all the time, then it's like efficiency. Right. So how do I work less, but produce the same, if not better of a result? Right. Which is like Opus Clip, like we talked about, where you can upload it to YouTube and download 15 clips, and then you can post that, and not only just post it on, say, Instagram, but post it on like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube Shorts, TikTok. You know, so each one of those 15 to 20 reels, you're posting each one 4 times. You know what I mean? So it's just a matter of like getting the most out for your input. And it's kind of just the natural progression of things as you stick to them if you're relentless enough. So
yeah, but first just get started, right? I think I was listening to one of your podcasts that said that. Just get started. And I pulled up a stat too, if you've probably heard this, where out of all the podcasts in the world, only about 10% have gone past episode 3.
Yep.
And then like if this data is right, only like 4% make it past episode 10, which is crazy. So someone like you, even if it hasn't gone viral, you're on like 28 or something. You said maybe this is 20, whatever you're at, almost 30. This is like my number 9. So that's, you know, like a legit podcast. So
yeah,
it's something to keep in mind, I think, like you said, and that's probably what separates a lot of people right there. It weeds you out. You're like, oh, why am I not seeing success right away? Or if I go to the gym, it's a few months, and then it's like, man, forget this, not seeing anything.
Yeah, and it's the same with anything, right? Like bodybuilding, entrepreneurship in general is like, if you can simply show up and outlast your competition, you win by default. And that's a big Alex Hormozy quote that I don't know, like you will never truly feel like you're doing it 100%, right? But if you can just show up at like, say, 90%, then, and show up at 90% consistently longer than everyone else, then you're going to beat them. And I always say, it's funny because like, I always say in bodybuilding, I've never been beat by the same guy twice. Right? Like, even if somebody beats me in bodybuilding, I come back the next year, I do the same show, and guess what? They're not there. And I win. You know what I mean? So it's like, and not to be like egotistical, but my point being, like, a lot of the time people will win, and then it's like, oh, well, I can't keep going. And they quit. And so, you know, like I placed 9th in the world in 2021, 7th in the world in 2023. And like, I know that like to get to number 1, it's going to be a while, but like, I'm not going to stop till I get there. So that's kind of just the mindset that you have to have, where it's like, you have to be in it for the long haul.
That's crazy. So, if you don't mind sharing some of this too, I mean, what are your goals moving forward? So that's probably it, right? Like you want to be number 1 natural, Olympia, compete doing that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We've got a lot. 2025 will be a great year, but yeah, so in 2025, competition wise, I start like my first show is in May of 2025 in Tokyo. So I'll be out there. It's looking like we're going to go to Spain and then Argentina after that. And then I come back to the US and I'll do Team USA in Vegas and then Natural Olympia. So it's going to be like a full year just prepping for shows, which will be crazy, but I'm excited for it. I think I do a lot better when I'm prepping for shows just because of the regimen and stuff. Like I do really good with that. So just mentally it helps a lot.
Well, that's got to be really hard though, right? And I've never done a show. I've heard it said before, do you think everyone should do a show? Like every guy that's into lifting, really? I mean, I'm sure it puts you through a lot. Do you think you get used to that, or what's kind of the hardest thing to overcome?
So, I mean, to kind of go back, I would say you just need to change the way you look at it, right? Because there's levels to everything. And what most people do is they get shredded or, they put on a little bit of muscle and then they're like, okay, I did it. And then it's like, well, now what? And that's, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I didn't set out to be a bodybuilder. Like I just wanted to put on size and not feel like crap and be depressed. So I went to the gym for 3 years. And once I went to the gym for 3 years, I was like, okay, well, like I need another goal. Otherwise I'm just going to fall off, and eat donuts and, go back to being depressed. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go be a bodybuilder now. So I think that's the thing that most guys struggle with is like they kind of hit this goal and then they're like, oh, well, I did it. So I think not necessarily like bodybuilding, but everybody needs a fitness goal no matter what it is, whether it's powerlifting, bodybuilding, or like running marathons, whatever you do it at the highest level, right? And if you just continue, like I said, if you just continuously show up, you will be competitive. So for me, like I liked the aesthetic of lifting. So I made bodybuilding my goal. I got comfortable with it and ended up where I ended up. So I think that's the thing that people need to realize is like, you're never like, as long as you have a body, you're never done taking care of it and pushing it to the highest level.
I love that. Yeah. And I mean, obviously aside from that, you do coaching as well. Right. So that's a little plug, but you also take on clients. Are you taking on more clients now?
Yeah, it's been crazy. So I started a coaching company called Sovereign Lifestyle back in 2019. This was like right when I was going through it, man. Basically it started the first few years of just me coaching and stuff. And then over the last little bit, we brought on a few people and now we've got 13 trainers that I work with. So yeah, it's been really good, but moving forward, it's really iffy if I'm going to be taking clients because there's so much to be done on the back end in terms of like the kind of the natural progression of entrepreneurship is like, and this is actually given to me from Bedros. But he has this model where it's like a pyramid, and at the bottom it's generalist, specialist, expert, authority, and then celebrity, right? So celebrity is like the highest level. So obviously I started as a generalist, worked my way into being a specialist, and now I'm like getting to the point where I want to become more of an authority and be like the face of the brand. So like, yeah, I'll take on clients if it's worth my time and their time. But like, for the most part, my primary focus is going to be the marketing of the company and the success of the coaches under me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge. And I know, I mean, it's a long game and we got a lot of time for you to get there too.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people have this question. Selfishly, I do too. So I don't know how to ask this, but like with a lot of the fitness industry, probably people around our age too, it's kind of like when you go into the gym, there's just a huge, I don't know, it's kind of just like, oh, let me deadlift as heavy as I can. Let me squat as heavy as I can. Like I get, you know what I mean? Like, let me try to bench just 3 plates, even if I've never done that before. Like that's what people maximize for.
Yeah.
I want to hear your opinion. I mean, if you can't give away too much sauce, don't, but
yeah, no,
like
dude, I'm an open book.
Yeah, I mean, if someone like me was just like, okay, my goal is to gain size, I think there's a misconception, and maybe people just think like I'm going to go in there and use the bro science, try to get as big as possible, like lift as much weight as I can for like 1 rep. Like, how do you optimize for size? So, and what are the lifts, I guess, right? Like, is it not, I've heard you say not the deadlift, right? Like, you don't have to squat as heavy as you have to. I want to hear you talk about that.
So this is where, I mean, it kind of goes back to my consistency, intensity, efficiency model, right? And I have a natural progression of that I've went through in my life as well. But to sum it up, it's the thing with bodybuilding is you have to realize that you are training muscles, not movements, right? So meaning that your primary focus needs to be the stimulus on the muscle and not just pushing weight through a movement, right? If you were just pushing weight through a movement, that makes you a power lifter. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to look like a power lifter because, you know, if you look at those guys, they're I don't know. Some people like that. Some people like that physique, but not me. Anyways, so with that being said, bodybuilding is truly about putting as much stimulus to the muscle as efficiently as possible, right? And that's the cool part about it is like you don't need to bench 315 to be a pro bodybuilder or whatever. Like I rarely ever go above 225 on anything. Like, you know, that's kind of my cap. I weigh 210 right now. So I've just found that like anything over 225 on anything, whether it's squat, which I don't even really squat much anymore, but bench press, you know, anything that's where it gets to the point where I can start feeling it to the point where it's like, I just don't want to push myself that far. Because another thing that you have to realize is longevity is a really real thing in everything, right? Like if you tear a bicep or tear a pec or whatever, you're going to be out for 6 months, you know, and then you come back, you've lost all the muscle and you're back to square one. So that's another thing is like, you just have to realize if you train smarter than everybody else, then it provides you this longevity in the sport. Whereas a lot of people, and I've seen it over and over, especially with people who are on steroids because their strength just goes through the roof. But like they end up tearing something and right back to square one. So it's this, I would say it's primarily just the overall intensity and stimulation to the muscle. So time under tension, weight does play a factor, but reps as well. And if you can have like a mixture of those three, plus your overall volume, then that's a better, indicator of true stimulus to the muscle than just adding weight.
Yeah. So for the young person right now, and me too, maybe you can say being less concerned with just going as heavy as you can and then looking around, seeing who saw that. I mean, because I'd rather, you know, when I'm 60 years old, I'd rather be in good shape and be, you know, lifting similar to how I am now. I mean, obviously just have that consistency instead of saying like, oh, when I was 26, I was able to squat this and bench this, because I bet no one really cares at that point. Like it's more important, like you said, the longevity aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, dude, I'm able to make it to the top 10 in the world for natural bodybuilding, and I hardly ever bench over 225, you know? Wow. So it's just like, you really don't, like, weight plays a factor, but it's not the only factor. And I think that's what people miss out on a lot of the time.
So because I know for me, longevity is important. And so I think that's because of you saying that kind of makes me rethink my whole routine and throwing that in and everything. So
yeah. And it's, I don't know. It's I always say bodybuilding there's a science and an art to it, right? Where it's like you can follow a program perfectly and you know, do everything you need in terms of your time under tension and stuff. But there's also this other side of it where it's like sometimes you just need to get out of your head and pump some weight and, you know, and make it happen. But yeah, it's I think if you can find that perfect balance where because this is how, like, the way that I like to look at it is like, a lot of the time I'm following a program and stuff, but also on the other hand, some days I just need those days to like relieve stress and be in tune with my body. So, so that helps quite a bit. But just knowing that like it's not always about just pushing up weight and driving more stimulus to the muscle.
Yeah, I love it. Man, thank you for sharing all these things too. There's a lot from this. I think it's important for someone to rewatch some of this, take notes, and implement some of these things too. Before I let you go too, I mean, unless you want to hit on anything else, I kind of want to know like the message that you'd share to people, or you being in the industry and wanting to be at the top of that pyramid, be the celebrity and authority on fitness and natural bodybuilding. What's maybe a message or something that you want people to know that's, unique to you? Like, what do you want to leave, or what kind of mark do you want to leave on the industry?
I mean, obviously my thing is natural bodybuilding. But I think the biggest thing is like, it just comes back to be the change that you want to see in the world, right? Because that's one of the things that, and you guys will see over the next 5 years, I have really big predictions that natural bodybuilding is going to completely take over the industry. But, yeah, like if you have, a belief or, a way of thinking that is not primarily accepted by everyone else, that's okay. Like stick with that and give it time. And a lot of the time, like when I've done that, I've seen the industry change, or I've seen like things happen where it like a lot of the time, like my beliefs and thoughts have like started to come to fruition. It's just, it takes years. So yeah, I think that's the thing, is just understand like how truly powerful it is to be able to just move with intention like that and stay true to who you are, and then make that impact on the industry, because like we all create the industry as it is. So like if you play a role and just maximize your role, like you truly do have a lot of influence. So
100%. And I think that you are the message too. That goes for anybody, like just seeing you and your content, and it's like, oh, I don't have to put my body through hell to look like that. I don't have to be on whatever, whatever drug XYZ to look like someone like this. So I think that's big in itself.
Yeah. And I'm super excited to see where the industry goes in the next few years, because we've been seeing small changes here and there that have kind of hinted at natural bodybuilding becoming very mainstream. But I always say 5 years, but we'll see. And my goal is to be at the forefront of it. So doing everything I can to hold on to that top placing.
I love that. And I hope people can follow you and see your content to watch your journey getting there too. So what is your handle? How can people find you?
Oh yeah. So it is DLowFlex on Instagram, YouTube, pretty much every social media. So yeah, guys, go follow me, engage with my stuff. If there's anything I can do to help you, that's the primary focus of all of my social media, is like, I just try to provide as much value as possible and help as many people as possible. So if there's ever anything that I can do, shoot me a DM somewhere and I'm sure I'll get back to it.
Yes. Dillon, thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for
Thanks
having
for
me.
hopping on. Yeah, this has been huge. Good luck with
so
everything.
Good to meet
I'm
you
excited.
As well.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where you go, and just 2025 alone too, the kind of stuff you're putting out. So
yeah, it's going to be so awesome.
All right, guys, we'll find Dillon. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good one.
Yep.